Most people know the image. A young girl's head spinning 360 degrees while she projectile vomits pea soup. It's the stuff of cinematic legend and the cornerstone of William Peter Blatty's The Exorcist. But if you strip away the Hollywood makeup and the dramatic lighting, you're left with something arguably much more unsettling. In 1949, a 14-year-old boy known pseudonymously for decades as Roland Doe, and later identified as Ronald Hunkler, became the center of a series of events so bizarre they prompted the Catholic Church to authorize one of the most documented exorcisms in American history. While the movie went for gore, the real story leaned into the uncanny valley of domestic terror, scratching from inside the furniture and skin that turned into a human Etch-a-Sketch. Roland wasn't a creepy kid by trade. By all accounts, he was an ordinary teenager living in Cottage City, Maryland. The weirdness didn't start with a demon. It started with a grieving aunt. Aunt Harriet, a spiritualist, taught Roland how to use a Ouija board to contact the other side. Shortly after Harriet passed away in early 1949, the Hunkler house turned into a soundstage for a horror movie no one asked for. It began with the scratching. This wasn't the sound of mice in the walls. Family members described a persistent, rhythmic clawing that seemed to originate from inside the boy's mattress and the floorboards beneath his bed. Imagine trying to sleep while something with what sounded like heavy, blunt talons scraped against the underside of your ribs from through the stuffing of your mattress. Things quickly escalated from sound to physical manipulation. Objects flew across rooms. Roland's bed would shake violently, or even slide across the floor while he was on it. When his mother placed a container of holy water on a nightstand, it reportedly zipped across the room and shattered. If the scratching was scary, what happened next was traumatizing. The physical manifestations moved from the furniture to Roland's own body. The family, desperate and terrified, sought help from their local Lutheran pastor and eventually turned to the Catholic Church. It was during these initial assessments that observers witnessed the most famous and arguably most chilling phenomenon of the case. The welts. Deep, red scratches began to appear on Roland's chest and stomach. They weren't random. They were linguistic. Witnesses, including Father Raymond Bishop and Father William Bowdern, claimed that words began to rise on the boy's skin like hives. Most notably, the word Louis appeared in raised, bloody-looking letters. The family interpreted this as a sign that they needed to take Roland to St. Louis, Missouri, where they had relatives and access to a Catholic hospital. The idea that a body could be used as a billboard for an unseen entity is a specific kind of horror that transcends mere ghost stories. It suggested that whatever was happening wasn't just around Roland. It was within him, literalizing the idea of a spiritual invasion. The actual exorcism phase took place over several weeks at the Election Brothers Hospital in St. Louis. This wasn't a one-and-done ritual. It was a grueling, nightly battle. Reports from the priests involved describe a boy who would go into trances during the day, appearing perfectly normal, only to transform at night. His voice would drop to a guttural rasp. He would scream profanities in languages he had never studied. In one particularly violent outburst, he managed to break free of his restraints and used a bedspring to slash the arm of a priest, requiring several stitches. But the scratches remained the centerpiece. Even under the watchful eyes of skeptical doctors and weary priests, the welts continued to form. At one point, a map of hell was said to have appeared on his chest alongside the image of a face. The boy was in a state of extreme agitation, and the scratches appeared even when his hands were clearly visible and held by those present. Paraphrased from the 1949 diary of Father Raymond J. Bishop. Now, for the reality check. In the decades since, researchers like Mark Opsasnik have poked holes in the legend. Was Roland just a deeply troubled, lonely kid who learned how to throw his voice and use a hidden spring to scratch himself? Was it a case of dissociative identity disorder or a severe reaction to the grief of losing his aunt? Skeptics argue that the supernatural elements were exaggerated by the priests who were viewing the events through a medieval theological lens. Even the words on the skin could be attributed to dermatographia, a condition where the skin becomes extremely sensitive to pressure, causing raised welts from even a light touch. However, the sheer volume of witnesses, including doctors, nurses, and multiple clergymen, who swore they saw furniture fly and heard voices that didn't sound human, makes it hard to dismiss entirely. The story ends unexpectedly. On April 18, 1949, after a particularly intense session, Roland reportedly cried out, "Satan, I am Saint Michael. I command you to leave this body now." The boy went into a final convulsion, then woke up and simply said, "He's gone." Roland Doe grew up to be Ronald Hunkler, a NASA engineer who helped with the Apollo missions. He lived a quiet, normal life and reportedly never wanted to talk about that year in 1949. He passed away in 2020, taking the absolute truth of what happened under those covers with him. Whether it was a demon, a psychological breakdown, or a triumph in teenage attention-seeking, the image of those scratching sounds coming from inside the mattress remains the ultimate bedtime nightmare. If you enjoyed this tale, please subscribe so you don't miss our next descent into the dark.